South Africa, our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, has mentioned that now is not the time for us to essentially abandon BEE, Black Economic Empowerment. Now, personally, within my own opinion, I believe that BEE is an absolute scam. Why? Because when you label something, it's supposed to do what it ultimately says. So part of the key word over there is also empower. Now, if it doesn't truly empower Black South Africa, then essentially the entire policy needs to be scrapped. So what I want to do today is I want you to firstly smash the like button over there. Let's see if we can get this video up to at least 200 likes so we can get the truth out there into the airwaves. And then also I want to share a couple of reasons as to why BEE just does not work and why racial policies just don't work. And then I want to give some clear call to action. So welcome to the William Moyses show. Sambonani Tobela Dumilang. Goeiemiddag and good afternoon, South Africa. Subscribe also if you have not yet done so. A lot of you that are currently busy watching aren't yet subscribed, so please do me an absolute solid and subscribe over there. And remember again to hit the like button for true empowerment. Okay, so with that being said, couple of reasons. Well, before I get into the reasons as to why it doesn't work, let me share the story, the backdrop over here. This is again according to newsday.co.za. So President Cyril Ramaphosa said that there are political parties within the Government of National Unity, the GNU, calling for the abolishment of black, or rather broad-based Black Economic Empowerment, BEE, right? So Ramaphosa was responding to Parliament after 2 days of political parties and MPs sharing their views on his SONA address, the State of the Nation address, which essentially was delivered on the 12th of February. So with that being said, during the debate, proceedings, GNU partners, the DA, as well as the Freedom Fund Plus, called for the abolishment of BEE. It cannot be acceptable to anyone in this house for African people, Indian people, and colored people to be poorer and have fewer opportunities than white people, he said, which is something that I completely disagree with, and I want to kind of break that down within this video. So here's a couple of reasons as to why BEE doesn't essentially work. Reason number one is because BEE essentially serves as a shield for corruption, because as soon as you say something against BEE, because you can see the landscape of what's happening, you're on the ground level, you can see that people's lives aren't genuinely being essentially empowered the way it ought to be, you can see the greater divide that gets caused, all right, and you start speaking up against it, all of a sudden you are labeled either a racist, or you are labeled an apartheid apologist, you are labeled as anti-transformation, etc., 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 which then essentially becomes a shield for other individuals to continue to play the system and completely pervert and corrupt the system, causing, all right, the people that are actually supposed to be empowered by the policy not to essentially be empowered. So number one, the reason why it doesn't work is because it serves as a shield for corruption. Reason number two is because it ultimately hinders excellence. It hinders excellence. It becomes an invitation for nepotism to take place, which is absolutely disastrous, because again, what happens is now you end up looking at the wrong things. You end up looking at someone's color, and yes, they might be competent and they happen to be a black individual. My question is, why should race then matter in the first place? Like, let the best player play at the end of the day, whether they're black, whether they're white, whether they're Indian, whether they're colored, no maganja. It doesn't really matter. What matters is, can the person get the job done? My background is actually in ipola, itiski, soccer. And when you're playing soccer, champ, you want the best player to play because you want the team to essentially win. And I believe from a governmental point of view, we need to also apply the same strategy and tactics over there too. So it hinders excellence. Number three, it creates also a greater divide. And it really starts to stir up more hatred between people, because now the individual is there, even though they might be competent, there's like this underlying hatred that maybe someone of another race would have towards that person, because they would think to themselves and assume, because what do we tend to do as people? We are more likely to assume things about one another than to actually ask about each other. And then we tend to assume things, and then what happens is now you have a hatred, a bitterness towards that particular person. No, you shouldn't, but this is what it ultimately does, because now you believe that the reason why that person got the job is simply because of the color of their skin. Okay, if there was no racial policy, we would not have that issue at the end of the day. We would just have what you would call normal jealousy of one person just ultimately being better than another. But here's the good news. If someone's currently better than you and more competent than you, the good news is you are not a robot. You are not a cement block. You have free will and you can improve. You can grow. You can mature. all right, if we'd be willing to do things the right way with wisdom, prudence, and, eternal principles that actually move the needle forward. So number 3, it creates a greater divide. Number 4, all right, it doesn't truly empower the people, because even those that are essentially empowered by it, psychologically, it can really stuff you up in a big way, because you'll always have this underlying thought in the back of your head of like, well, maybe the reason why you got promoted is because of the color of your skin, compared to like you're actually competent and talented in what you do. Again, I want to be very clear. That doesn't mean that someone that has been promoted because of the color of their skin doesn't have some level of competence. Yes, that might be true. Okay. What I am saying is it's the underlying psychological effect of the subconscious, where you begin to think to yourself, well, maybe it's just because of the color of my skin. So now you literally start to form your entire identity around the color of your skin. And then the temptation for someone to fall into racism or a superiority complex based on the color of their skin becomes elevated in a significant way. This is why I believe it doesn't work. And then also number 5, from a practical standpoint, it really creates investor uncertainty, because now there's all of these weird racial policies at play. And now investors who help assist a company to grow so they can actually employ more people, they become uncertain. Hence, the company becomes cash strapped, and it becomes a massive issue for the company, because now they're not able to maybe hire the people or employ the people the way they ought to, because investors are pulling out because of the various racial policies that makes things very, very uncertain at the end of the day. So those are a couple of reasons as to why I believe that BE is a scam and it doesn't really work. A little side note over here: if BE was truly about empowering the black majority, why is it that over 60% of this country's black population are living in the upper bound poverty line? Okay, which is a massive problem over there. There's only a small handful of individuals that have truly benefited through BEE, and more often than not, it's come through very corrupt means. Okay, tender, fraud, corruption, procurement situations over there, and it becomes just a massive, massive ball of corruption. Now, if we completely remove the racial policies and we allow those that, are able to manage things effectively moving forward, now we can begin to see a completely different play happen. And now people are going to be like, well, not everyone can do that. Well, you can learn. You can grow, and now even more so than ever. There's something called the internet. There's something called YouTube. There's something called, Google that you can go on, ChatGPT. Like, you can learn, you can grow, you can mature. Like, there's such an opportunity that's available, especially for the youth of this beautiful country. Okay, so with that being said, what I want to leave you all with today is that, again, any country that focuses on race will essentially become race obsessed. And when a country becomes race obsessed, it really opens us up to tremendous amounts of manipulation, intimidation, and ungodly control, which biblically is also referred to as witchcraft. And we don't want that. Okay, so I believe that we need to get people to stop focusing on things that they can't change and get them to focus on things that they can change. That in making better decisions, taking better action, treating other people differently and better the way you would like to be treated. Like, to get people to focus on things that they can change. Because if you force people to focus on things that they can't change, like what family they were born into, as well as the color of their skin, people start losing hope. And when a country starts to lose hope, the inevitable end of that is absolute chaos and tyranny, which is what we are trying to fight against moving forward at King and Me specifically. We want people to discover, you know what, there's a God and you and I are not him. And the more you are willing to yield, submit, and surrender to his plan, purpose, and destiny for your life, the more freedom you'll ultimately begin to experience within your life, the more hope you'll essentially carry, and the greater blessing you can essentially be to the very people that you claim that you love. And again, I want to reiterate the soccer analogy over here specifically, which is, in soccer, you want the best player to play. You want the best left back to play. Now, in a team, right, within soccer, there's usually like substitutes for every kind of position over there. Now, if the current left back is the starting left back and the other one isn't currently busy starting, the good news is the other guy can either go to another team, all right, once the contract is finished, or he can just up his game. Okay, up his game and trust that by the grace of God, things will work out and he'll get some game time moving forward. But the point I'm trying to make is, you're not in a hopeless situation. You can make different decisions. Okay, so the team's policies don't have to change in order to accommodate you. Okay, now I understand that we have a backlog of history and so forth, but we need to decide either we're going to build off of history or we're going to build a greater future moving forward. Because you can't build great things if you're constantly looking in the rear view mirror at the past. We need to at some point make a decision to make the transition from one point of like, yes, what happened in the past matters. However, we are 30 years down the line over here right now, and now we need to make another transition. And I really believe that as a country, we are at a transitional stage right now where we need to put the old to rest. Like, God has literally delivered us out of one of the greatest atrocities ever, which is apartheid. And we came through the Red Sea. And now it's like, do you want to live in the promised land or do you want to die in the wilderness? That is literally the pivotal moment I believe we are at present moment in this country. And therefore we need young men, young women who will, say, yes, what happened in the past matters, but history is not my destiny. I'm going to progress. I'm going to move forward. I'm going to build a strong family. I'm going to build a strong company or an organization. I'm going to be a blessing to this country. I'm not going to allow a race to determine my life, but I'm going to run the race God has called me to run. So that's our time here today. I'm hoping that you got something out of this video. If you did, consider becoming a member of this channel where you are able to support us also on a monthly basis so we can continue to get the good news out there. We can continue to get the truth out there, all right, from a pro-God, pro-South Africa standpoint. But consider joining today. There's a join button down there below. All right. If you want to get activated as well today, you can join us at King in Me. There's a link in the description here below. Go check out the website over there on how you can get involved. And with that being said, just know today, namhlanje, that your voice matters. Consider sharing this video as well far and wide, and we'll see you, Lord willingly, in the next video.